battle at Wolf 359 decimated Starfleet, but did it in the end actually save the entire Federation?
We are the Borg. Lower your shields and surrender your ships. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Your culture will adapt to service us. Resistance is futile.
Welcome to SciTrek, your sci-fi TV and movie channel. In 2367, in stardate 44002.3, in the Wolf system, there was a battle between Starfleet and a single Borg cube. 40 vessels stood up against that invading vessel, and 39 were destroyed. This sent shockwaves through the Federation, not just because it was the worst defeat the Federation and Starfleet had suffered since the Klingon War, but more importantly, at the ease of their defeat. The Borg barely even slowed down and completely wiped out 39 vessels, nearly destroying the 40th without really breaking a sweat. And this was an encounter that the Federation had known about for 18 months before. They had been preparing for this, and their preparations were very, very quickly shown to not really be worth much. So, why do I say that this battle, one of the worst single defeats in Starfleet's history, went on to save the Federation? Well, first of all, we've got to remember the time frame of the Next Generation. It was really the golden age of Starfleet when the Galaxy-class Enterprise NCC 1701D was commissioned. She had families aboard. She was really a flying city in lots of ways, with vast internal spaces, entertainment centers, several holodecks, etc., etc. She was not really particularly well armed compared to other vessels, say, like a Romulan bird of prey. She was not particularly well defended, as we saw several times. She was an all-round vessel, really designed with exploration in mind. The fact that they had families on board the Enterprise really tells us everything we need to know about the mindset of the Federation and Starfleet at the time. They were enjoying a period of relative peace and confidence. Their alliance following the Khitomer Accords with the Klingons meant that the Federation's only real main adversary, the Romulans, was really under their thumb. The Klingons were really violent and militaristic, and the Federation always had that stick ready. If there was ever been a conflict with the Romulans at this period, the Klingons would have been the Federation's ace up their sleeve. They would have been able to use the Klingons for some of the bloodier battles. And even though the Romulans had a very powerful fleet, it would not have been able to stand against the combined might of the Federation and the Klingon fleets. I think this put the Federation in a state of complacency, a complacency that was shattered by Wolf 359. So what was the reaction by Starfleet? Well, one thing they started to do is to develop the Defiant class, a mighty little ship that proved itself in combat over and over again. Even though following the defeat of the Borg, there was again a period of somewhat complacency running up to the Dominion conflict, and the Defiant was maybe seen as not as vital as it previously was. There was still, though, a massive development program and a rebuilding of the fleet. We saw new starships and the development of the Sovereign class that would follow the Enterprise D. Even things like the development of the Intrepid class was a direct response to the Borg invasion. Now, the Enterprise D and the Enterprise E even were multi-purpose vessels, and that's what Starfleet was made up of at this time. We had the smaller science vessels, but the bulk of the fleet was these multi-capability starships. They weren't really designed with any one thing in mind. The Defiant, though, was a change in philosophy. She was a vessel designed purely for conflict. But then we also got to see ships like the Prometheus with its multi-vector attack mode, vessels that were designed with combat in mind, the primary reason for her construction was battle. And when the Dominion War started, the Federation must have been thanking their lucky stars that all of this development work and all of this construction of new starships had started. Because when the Dominion came through the wormhole in such numbers, the Federation would not have been ready if it wasn't for the conflict with the Borg and the battle at Wolf 359. You see, the Dominion have the cunning of the Romulans, the brutality of the Klingons, and the intelligence of the Federation. They were able to build starships faster than anyone could imagine. Their vessels had technology that the Federation couldn't, at least initially, counter. Weapon fire that cut straight through their shields as if they weren't there. They were able to create political alliances across the Alpha Quadrant, which put the Federation on its back foot almost immediately. Whereas the Borg were like a sledgehammer, the Dominion were an all-purpose enemy, and they were able to fight the Federation in a multiple of different ways. They had dominated the Gamma Quadrant for who knows how long, because they were able to fight in many different ways. They used politics as a weapon almost as freely as they used a phaser. They were just as cunning as they were brutal, and that made them a terrifying adversary for the Federation and the entire Alpha Quadrant. As I said, the Federation and Starfleet had been constructing new vessels already and developing new starships. Things like the Defiant and the Prometheus don't get built overnight. The Dominion War started 6 years after the events at Wolf 359. That had given the Federation and Starfleet the opportunity to not only rebuild the fleet, but also to start the development work on these new fighting vessels, this new philosophy, as they were going out of the golden age of peace and into a period of almost constant conflict. Now, thanks to the cunning of the Dominion, the Klingons and Federation nearly went into conflict themselves. The shapeshifters were out there in the Alpha Quadrant causing trouble well before their fleet ever arrived. It meant they had a tactic of divide and conquer between the Federation and the Klingons, and it nearly worked. So the Federation was stood almost alone against the Dominion for large sections of this war. They built new starships as quickly as possible, but they amassed fleets of hundreds of starships really quickly, remembering that they could only amass a fleet of 40 at Wolf 359. Now, obviously, the Federation and Starfleet had a little bit more time to prepare rather than one Borg cube coming straight at them. They knew this conflict was coming for a couple of years and were able to start building those vessels. But if it wasn't for the lessons learned at Wolf 359 about how weak Starfleet was against an enemy like this, those preparations wouldn't have started. And Starfleet would have had no chance at all against the advancing hordes of the Dominion. So even though the battle at Wolf 359 was devastating for the Federation and for Starfleet, if it hadn't have happened though, the Dominion may have walked straight into the Federation and there would have been very, very little in their way. I actually think Wolf 359 is the reason why the Federation survived the Dominion War. But guys, what do you think? Get into the comments. The Dominion really were, in lots of ways, the ultimate enemy of the Federation. They even used the Federation's own tactics against them. They used diplomacy against them. And to defeat them, the Federation didn't only have to ally itself with the Klingons, the Romulans, and anybody else that would listen, but they also had to then use tactics that were not very Federation-y. Get into the comments and tell me what you think. If you are new to the channel, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. You'll never miss any of our new videos. And also go over to patreon.com/SciTrek, where most of our new videos do premiere first, and you get to see them without the adverts, you lucky bunnies. Also go over to scitrek.co.uk, where we do articles based on most of our videos, and we try to add a little bit more information for you to digest. As always, please stay safe, and I'll see you next time.
Computer, erase that entire personal log.